Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. Russ and Addison are here and ready for when this drops. 1 week. 1 week until the NFL draft, which is why today's episode is players to trade for and trade away before the NFL draft. You know, like Addison messages me this morning. Actually, I messaged Addison this morning. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's Wednesday, but I cannot confirm because I have no idea what day it is. Like, that's the kind of week it's been. And Addison goes, well, we have players to trade forward, players to trade away. Which should we do this week? Which should we do next week? And I was just like, why don't we just do both of those now and then worry about next week? Also, because it comes out on Thursday, that's the day of the draft, which doesn't give you all a lot of time to act on any of this. Plus, we would have to. He was like, all right, here's 2 players for this, 2 players for that. We have to think of more players. I'm like, or
just do all 4 of them.
Or we could just do all of them and not have to think about anything right now and let future Russ and Addison worry about it next week. We're exactly where we landed.
We are in so much trouble next week.
But we want nothing. But for now, we are doing 2 players to trade for, 2 players to trade away before the NFL draft rolls along, which means you got a week to figure this out. And as we go along, we'll explain why we think that way. The first one is players to trade for, and it's a player that Addison and I have been in favor of trading for a while now, and that is Mr. Kyler Murray himself. It is beyond chalk at this point to believe that the Cardinals are going to use their first round pick on a wide receiver. I saw Peter Schrager, I think is his name, the dude that's on NFL, I think.
Yeah, he just dropped a mock yesterday.
Yes, it was fantastic because it had the Giants trading up to 3 or 4 to draft JJ McCarthy and having the Cardinals move back 2, which means the Chargers would get Marvin Harrison Jr. And they had the Cardinals. He had the Cardinals taking Roma Dunze. First of all, drooling over the idea of Marvin Harrison Jr. with Justin Herbert. Straight up drooling over it. Though it would be the same with Kyler Murray either. Anyway, but Roma Dunze over Neighbors, and we're going to talk about the Neighbors landing spot a little later, so I'm not going to spoil that. But regardless, whether they go Neighbors, whether they go with Dunze, like they're going to get a new wide receiver 1 on their team. Not to mention they still have Trey McBride in all of his target hog glory. So that's why, at least in my, because I didn't make this list whatsoever. I did zero work this morning. This was all Addison. He listed the players and everything. So at least that's why I believe Kyler is a buy before the draft. Did I miss anything?
No, that's basically it. They all, the only other thing I'll add is they also do have a second first-round pick in the mid-20s. I would not be surprised, given the state of their wide receiver position, if they actually double dip in this class.
That would be so exciting.
Marvin Harrison Jr. and Adonai or Worthy or Troy Franklin, or if they trade up for BTJ. I mean, they could do a lot of stuff with these 2 first-round picks.
That would be sexy and necessary. Let's be honest. Yes. they don't have much of anything right now.
Yes.
That's a little rough.
But at least if it's Marvin Harrison or Neighbors or even Odunze, any one of the 3, Kyler's value is going to skyrocket.
All right. So let's get into the trades. 12-team Superflex. Kyler Murray and the 210 for AJ Brown and the 202. Kyler Murray, 705, the 210, 118 for a total of 823. AJ Brown, 693, the 202, 157, total of 850. This is very easily Kyler Murray for me. The 210 and the 202 is not enough of a difference to change any real needle for me. It's nice. Like, I like the idea of getting up for the 202, but when we're talking Kyler and AJ Brown, it changes nothing for me. Like, this isn't a big enough of a gap. We're talking about quarterback for non-quarterback. We're talking, for me, a top 7 quarterback for, AJ Brown's in the second tier of wide receivers for me. Like, he was, before last season, again, he was my wide receiver 3, but CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown did enough to jump up into that top tier for me. They're below Chase and Jefferson, but they're still up there for me, which puts AJ Brown at wide receiver 5-ish for me, not thinking about, well, no, I'll put him over Puka. I'll put him over Garrett Wilson, who's the wide receiver 6 in ADP. But also when you're factoring in giving a quarterback and not getting one back, there's no tax here. And there needs to be a heavy one with this tier of quarterback for me. So this is very easy Kyler Murray for me.
It's very easy Kyler Murray for me as well. I looked at this guy's roster who was selling Kyler, and my assumption was that he had perhaps a too many quarterbacks. And so you have I can't start all these guys. So let me sell one of them to get a position where I need help at. That was the case because this guy has Stroud, Herbert, Jared Goff, and Daniel Jones. And had Kyler in there before making this deal. Don't know how he did all that, but he did.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
The issue with this, though, and as well, I'm assuming that you were also going to say, is that you need to be able to get the proper value for Kyler. Like, you can't just sell, especially in a Superflex league, a premium position like quarterback, a young top 10 valued quarterback who produces like it too. You can't just sell that for some other replacement at, even discounted value or even kind of at value, especially when you're not getting a quarterback back. Like, people want to say like, oh, you have too many quarterbacks, so I'm not going to pay full price for one of them. But no, it's actually the opposite, where you don't have any quarterbacks. You should be willing to pay more for it. It's a supply and demand issue, because even if you held all 5 of those quarterbacks, that is now fewer quarterbacks that you have to go up against, especially fewer elite quarterbacks that you have to go up against. Even if your other positions aren't up to par with other teams' positions. So this is easy with Kyler Murray for me. If you're selling Kyler Murray just because you have an excess amount, you need to get more.
The way I phrase this is you need to trade players at the value to the other team's roster, not yours. Just because Kyler is worth less on your roster because of your amount of quarterbacks doesn't mean he's worth that little on their roster. Let's see what the next one is. Kyler Murray and Stephon Diggs for Jordan Addison, the 107, and Christian Watson. Can I just say Kyler Murray side already? Kyler 705, Steph Diggs at 216 for a total of 921. Jordan Addison, love it, up at 410. The 107, 377. Christian Watson still hanging on at 201 for a total of 988. So I like this a little better because this feels like a rebuild move where your team is bad, except you still have Kyler. So you're kicking off your rebuild by getting a bunch of two young wide receivers. Well, sorry, step back. You're getting rid of your best asset, most likely, and an old guy. Sorry, Steph Diggs, you're well younger than I am. For young wide receivers in a draft pick, which will be another young wide receiver, or maybe a quarterback even. It's not out of the realm of possibility of McCarthy still being around at 107, even when he gets drafted at 4th or 5th.
Or May if he goes to the Patriots.
I still think
depending on your league.
Top 4.
Probably. But I can see there will be leagues out there that hate May on the Patriots.
Absolutely, and no one will question it. Everyone will be like, "Yep, I get that."
Yep.
All of that being said, this is way too much. All right, this is quarters for $1, and the problem is it feels like it's 3 quarters for $1. You are overpaying. It's 987.7 to 920.8, but it's 3 for 2, and it's. I love what we saw out of Jordan Addison. Schrager's mock draft of the Vikings using that 23rd pick they traded for to take Bo Nix was not very reassuring for the situation, though. Even if it is to let Sam Darnold play for a year, that still does not feel great. It's like, hey, it worked for Jordan Love, right? The Packers drafted him and let him sit forever, and maybe that'll work for Bo Nix. Sure, man. Sure. This is too much maybe for Kyler Murray, and I think that's really what is stopping me from this. I don't feel like it's enough value in the first place. I love Jordan Addison. I love the piece you're going to get at 107 because the 107 is probably going to be some combination of Odunze, Bowers, or McCarthy, in which case I think you're getting a good asset with a chance of being a great one. McCarthy, but Odunze and Bowers to me have the chance of being rather elite at their positions. I think for me to take this, that would need to be the 104. I would need that last shot at a quarterback for me to want to do this. I don't think I've already said how I feel about where Kyler Murray should be, which means I think he's worth at least the 101. Like I'm taking Kyler over Caleb Williams. So, and I don't think the 107 and Jordan Addison gets you to the 101. The 104 and Jordan Addison, I think, makes it a real discussion.
Yeah, it's just spreading the value out too much. And I get, if you're trying to rebuild, that is kind of what you want to do, especially if you don't have a ton of assets and Kyler Murray really is like far and away the best player on your team. You want to spread out your assets to give you the most shots of gaining value and potentially production as well too, to speed up that rebuild. The issue here is I just feel like there's not enough known value coming back. Like Jordan Addison could be great, but like you said, the quarterback situation is still in flux. And he, especially when Hawkinson comes back, it's like, is he the 2? Is he the 3? Is that going to matter with a bad quarterback, so to speak? Like it only takes it takes a certain number of quarterbacks to actually elevate a second or third option on a team, especially to elevate to a top 15 wide receiver when you already have Justin Jefferson, so that's an issue. Christian Watson, I agree. I've been out on Christian Watson since he entered the league. The 107 is going to be a great player, like you said, but again, it's just that player could bust. That player could be slow to gain value or produce. That there's a lot of things that could happen with that 1.07 that there's just not enough known coming back. Like Jordan Addison and Christian Watson combined for about 610 points in the analyzer. I want to bump that up. Puka and Garrett Wilson are at 680. Would you do one of them and the 107 for Kyler and Diggs? I think that makes more sense. Even for a rebuilding team, you're not really spreading out assets, but you get younger and you have more.
It's more solidified value. It's more value that, hold on, let me find a way to word this. That if that wasn't your last move, which it wouldn't be, especially if my team was that bad, like I would make that move and then try to roll out those top tier wide receivers and hold on to that pick. Like, because if I'm holding the 107, I want to draft Bowers or a Dunze or McCarthy. Like, I want one of the 3 of those for my team. Like, those are team building pieces. But then to be able to turn around and trade Puka for, I mean, let me put my bias out there. T Higgins plus, Brandon Aiyuk plus, like tear down at wide receiver to keep going and trying to gain more assets. You will have a much easier time getting a trade done for those guys than you will the very specific people that believe in Addison and Christian Watson. So the next player we're talking about trading for before the NFL draft is Brandon Aiyuk. And I'm going to venture the guess here that you are of the mind that he's probably going to be moved during the draft.
Yes. Yeah, I think this could be an AJ Brown situation.
More importantly, and I don't remember if we've talked about this or not, did you see the photos of him and Mike Tomlin next to each other?
No,
they're the same person.
You can't tell them
apart. Brandon Aiyuk cut off his dreads. They could probably pass for each other. But to bring it back to this, we both believe that Brandon Aiyuk is a very good player. And again, being on a very good offense, even though it will be a low volume offense for him, it isn't a terrible thing. And it's the same thing with Higgins. Being in Cincinnati is not a bad thing, even though he has Jamar Chase there. It's still, being on a good offense is good for the offensive players. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like that is a very basic and easy statement that is true.
But sometimes forgotten. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about some Brandon Aiyuk trades. 12-team, 1 quarterback. Brandon Aiyuk and Kyler Murray for Devon Achane and Christian Kirk. Brandon Aiyuk in at 696, Kyler Murray 263, total of 959. Devon Achane 618, Christian Kirk 212 for a total of 831. Okay, so real quick, QBs in a 1 quarterback. I'm pretty much of the mind that you don't really trade quarterbacks for value in 1 QB unless they're difference-making quarterbacks. We've made it known that I believe that Kyler Murray is a difference-making quarterback. So if this were Jared Goff or those not even second, like the 3rd-tier guys, like, Dak Prescott even, like Dak Prescott scores really well, but he's not a difference. Like he's not
right. Like Lawrence, Purdy, Tua, like they're streamable, but they're not like every week you're just like excited to start this guy.
So like if you're telling me I can get Kyler Murray for Christian Kirk, I'm all on board for taking Kyler Murray. And I'm going to take Brandon Aiyuk over Devon Achane. I love the idea of Devon Achane. The fact that he's, hold on, let me get the right number up. Go to running backs. He's actually running back 9 in Superflex ADP. He's higher in 1QB ADP. It's
7.
Yeah. I'm not. It's one of those things where I don't know who I'd move above him necessarily, but I don't feel comfortable with him being that high. I love everything we saw when he was on the field. It might be one of those things where he's not built to be on the field the whole season.
They have had visits with bigger style, like pounder running backs, I think.
I mean, that's more of a Mostert thing because Mostert goes in at the goal line.
But that's what I mean, though. Like, I think it's a signal that like they're looking to replace Mostert long term because Achane can't be every down.
And I'm fine with that. I love when players that shouldn't be workhorses aren't treated as them because that gets them out of the league very quickly. Like, we got lucky with Austin Eckler. We got lucky. Well, I mean, lucky isn't right with Christian McCaffrey. The man turned himself into the Incredible Hulk. That was on him. He did that. Yeah. And then fake injured his way out of Carolina. But again, that's a different story.
Yeah, that's what he did.
Like, if Achane turns into a 50% guy, I'm thrilled with that because it's clear that efficiency is on his side with how fast he is. Like, and any run can go for a 60-yard touchdown, assuming they are at least 60 yards away from the end zone. So I'm fine with him being a split back, but I need to see more of it in more games. And I'm not talking about 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. That doesn't need to happen, but give me multiple games of 70, 80 yards and a touchdown and 2 or 3 catches, and I'll start feeling better about him as a player, assuming those spike games still happen. In which case, if they're close enough, which they kind of are, even in the analyzers, 696 to 618, I'm going to take my positional bias at wide receiver and what I feel is a much safer asset and go with Aiyuk. So I'm taking both sides on the Aiyuk and Kyler side.
That's exactly where I was too. And I don't know if it's so much positional bias taking the top wide receiver over the top running back. That's just kind of what happens in Dynasty in general is you just have, it's a safer position, less frequently injured position. So like not even just like when you're like, all right, I'm taking the wide receiver 1 over the RB1, wide receiver 2 over the wide receiver or RB2, but like you, especially with running backs down in like the bottom of the top 10, that's probably a good 15 to 20 wide receivers. So if you have Brandon Aiyuk in there, which I have Aiyuk closer to being a dynasty wide receiver 1, then I'm easily taking him over Achane just because of, like I said, like the value, the confidence that I have in Aiyuk, and the positional, the solidified value of the wide receiver over a running back that so much could happen over the course of the next couple of years to change his value drastically.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on because we're just changing trades at this point. So 12-team super flex and a 2-point PPR tight end premium. Fun. Wow. Okay. I need a moment to breathe.
Yep.
Trey McBride and Brandon Aiyuk for Christian McCaffrey and T. Higgins. So again, a quick reminder that there is a tight end premium button on the trade analyzer, except it is set to a 0.5 premium, which means we need to up McBride's value in here, even though he's a 503 already. So McBride at 503, Aiyuk at 497 for a total of 1,000. That's so nice and easy.
It's cool.
The other side, Christian McCaffrey at 595, T. Higgins 338 for a total of 933. This is so tough for me because it's Christian McCaffrey. Like, I don't like trading for running backs, but if you're going to do it, you do for Christian McCaffrey. 2 PPR for tight ends. It's funny. My buddy Zach Reed makes a joke in my leagues. I did a dispersal draft where I left the dispersal draft with Dak Prescott, Tua, Goff, and like a high-level backup. I can't remember who it was. McBride, Hawkinson, and Njoku. So he's like, wow, Russ, you drafted 6 quarterbacks. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then he, it's like, why are you being a jerk and not listening to my podcast? So I went and listened to one of the Dynasty Dummies episodes where he pretty much equates tight ends in these leagues with these high premiums to being just as important to your team as having quarterbacks, where you have McBride and Kelsey, McBride and Andrews, McBride and any of those guys, you have a severe advantage over other teams. But Christian McCaffrey is a severe advantage against every other team.
Yes.
So, I'm super stuck on this. And I know if I'm trying to win, if I'm like, I'm going to win this year, I'm going to take the McCaffrey side. Because I wouldn't, will Aiyuk outscore Higgins? Probably. Would I be surprised if they were pretty close, within 10, 20% of each other? No. And that's fine for me to get what I think Christian McCaffrey will easily be the running back 1 again.
Yeah, I'm taking the Trey McBride and Brandon Aiyuk side. Yeah, it's just the smarter side to take. And I understand you're like, it's Christian McCaffrey, but Trey McBride in a 2 PPR tight end premium league, let's see, from week 8 on, Trey McBride in a 2 PPR. Is this premium? I think so. Averaged over 20 fantasy points per game.
Yeah.
21.5 fantasy points per game. For reference, Christian McCaffrey last year averaged 24.5. So yes, McCaffrey is still that much of an advantage over everybody else, but it's trimmed down significantly from a tight end with Trey McBride's skill set and the way that he scores fantasy points. So I'm taking that positional advantage at tight end over the aging running back who, yes, McCaffrey could probably still do McCaffrey things for the next 3 to 4 years until he's 30 years old, just like Derrick Henry has basically been doing. But he's a running back and there's still risk there. Whereas in 3 years from now, you're going to have a 30-year-old Christian McCaffrey versus a 27-year-old Trey McBride. And then Aiyuk and Higgins, I'm taking Aiyuk over Higgins. So I think in a 2 PPR tight end premium league, it just makes so much more sense just to take the elite tight end. And yeah, this is a really, really fun trade, though.
All right, so let's move on. So let's talk about players to trade away before the NFL draft rolls around. And you're gonna have to spell this one out for me because you picked Rachaad White.
I did. The reasoning behind this is, I already feel like Rachaad White is slightly overvalued. I mean, he's the RB10 in April 1 quarterback ADP, but he's basically in the same tier as Saquon and Walker and Josh Jacobs. And ETN's slightly ahead of him. So he's in that kind of 8 to 12 range, essentially.
Yeah.
Which I think is fine. But again, how you explained it for Achane is kind of similar to how it is for White, where he needs to be there, but I don't feel comfortable really having him there, so to speak. And then you look at the possibility that they add another running back in this class, which I know that this class is not threatening really to a lot of running backs in the NFL already, but Rachaad White had a massive usage share last year, which was the big reason why he was so effective. And his receiving volume, I expect his receiving volume to stay the same, but his rushing efficiency was so bad last year that I would not be surprised at all if they look to bring in somebody who can be more of the ground and pound, maybe not like the first and second down and Rachaad White is second and third down, but, be somebody who can soak up a lot of those smaller types of touches, kind of like what we thought maybe Charbonnet would do to Kenneth Walker last year, after the draft. Yeah. And there are a few names that could fit that kind of a profile for the Buccaneers. And I think they've met with Braylon Allen, if I'm not mistaken. So, that's kind of what I'm looking for with Rachaad White, that there is a possibility that we see his value drop after the NFL draft because a running back comes in, maybe not a second round running back like Charbonnet was last year for Walker, but somebody to take away touches. And now we are concerned about Rachaad White's full workload replicating itself from last year.
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to say that stat wise, Rachaad White is bizarro Devon Achane, because Achane has a few touches but massive efficiency. Rachaad White has massive touches, and like he's saying, efficiency is almost doing a disservice to how little efficiency he had.
Yes.
So 12-team Superflex, Rachaad White and the 112 for Drake London. Rachaad White, 258, the 112, 212 for a total of 470. Drake London, 541. So the analyzer has this heavily in favor of Drake London. I am heavily in favor of Drake London. Not this one.
I mean, do we need to explain why?
Not really. I will say again, like if we go through the NFL draft and the Buccaneers don't grab even like around
anybody
3 or 4,
terrifying.
Like if they're gonna probably draft a running back because like they need bodies. I think 1 or 2 guys left. They're back.
If they draft like Isaac Guerrero in the 6th round, I'm not all that concerned.
Really, you made up a name really on the spot right there. That was good for you. That was good.
Thank you.
Making stuff up. Yep. Exactly. Like if they draft round 5, 6, 7, you're not really worried about it. They draft in round 3 or 4. Round 2, of course. Round 1, then the Buccaneers have a different problem altogether.
Wow. And so does Rachaad White. Yes.
Yeah. But also, like that being said, but like if they escape the draft, if Rachaad White, I should say, escapes this draft relatively unscathed, this will feel better because you're going to get a workhorse running back, even if he's not great. It's still going to be on a good enough offense where he'll put up fantasy points. And the 112 is going to be a fun wide receiver. Like that is like I did
a fun wide receiver.
Yeah. Like I did a 1 QB draft, a mock draft a couple of days ago, and it was still fun wide receivers at the 112, which means in a super flex draft, adding those 4 quarterbacks in, you're going to get a really fun wide receiver at the 112. Like I get the appeal of the White and 112. And this is like, if you're selling London right now, it should be based off of the hype, even if you don't believe in him. Like, I don't think you should use the phrase get out on Drake London. And I think that's what this feels like. This feels like getting out on Drake London.
Yeah, this feels like you listened to somebody say, now would be a good time to shop Drake London because his value rose up because they got Kirk Cousins. And then you just use that as a way to just make a deal happen, so to speak. But this is not really what I want to do. Like, first of all, this kind of goes back to, the last conversation that we had earlier with like Aiyuk versus Achane, where it's like, I'm going to take the more wide receiver 1 in Dynasty versus the more RB1 in Dynasty, just straight up 1 for 1, just because of the positional difference. And the 112 is not like, you described it perfectly. It's a fun wide receiver, but you're probably not getting the premier pick. Like whoever ends up landing on Buffalo is not going to be there at 112. They're going to get bumped up to probably like 108, 109 in a super flex.
Yeah. Like chances are you're even missing out on the worthy Franklin,
Adonai, Franklin, McConkey. Those are probably your 4 that you're looking at there. Maybe somebody else gets in that has like a really good landing spot. But you're not going to get the best of that group from that has the best landing spot, though. That's kind of the issue. Is you're just kind of get whoever's left, which still might be a good player, but at the end of the day, I still believe in Drake London. I believe in him with Kirk Cousins.
That's the real big part. Is the thing that Drake London came in as a highly valued prospect, played pretty well with trash at quarterback and trash at head coach. And now we have things in a much more positive situation, which again, this feels like a last year trade for Drake London.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that.
Next. Wow. Jalen Waddle, Rachaad White, and the 111 for Jamar Chase. Now, Jalen Waddle's value is another conversation altogether. Like his value is dropping for no reason whatsoever. Jalen Waddle in at 468, Rachaad White 258, and the 111 in at 243 for a total of 969. Jamar Chase by himself 856. So at least we have one thing going for us. This is a 3 for 1, and the 3 side is overpaying by over 100 analyzer points, which is at least a start.
That's true. That's true.
I'm not as firmly on the Chase side as I thought I would be. Like when I first glanced at this, if Rachaad White comes out even mostly unscathed and he's a 65%, like if he's the 1A, in a committee, I think you're making out pretty good on getting a solid wide receiver 2 with upside, a low end running back 1, and a fun wide receiver. Like, to me, this is a realistic Chase deal. It's not one of the Twitter Chase deals where you get someone's entire team for the top tier wide receiver. Like, this is very realistic, and I wouldn't do it because of how I feel like on running backs in general, no less Rachaad White. But I think I take the Waddle side in this. Like, I don't think I feel great giving all of this up for Chase, even though, of course, you're never sad for having Jamar Chase on your roster.
No, that's for sure. Would you trade Jamar Chase then for Waddle and Drake London if we just kind of swap that down in there?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
because I believe enough in Waddle and have enough faith in London, and those are two different things, just in case that sounded the same. So I'm good enough to do that, because I know whenever we say you trade away a stud, you want something solid coming back. And I think Waddle is at worst solid, which, means he can go up from there. And London is at least good with a lot of room to go up. I just feel like I think we will see it very quickly, but I still need to see it before I'm ready to really boost London.
Right. I agree with everything that you said. I just want Jamar Chase. It's Jamar Chase at the end of the day. And I mean, if you replace Chase with Lamb or Amon-Ra, I would feel the exact same way. Chase might be the most affordable guy of that list, because I feel like people it's kind of been the
season, forgetting that Burrow didn't play most of it. Yeah.
What have you done lately might come into play a little bit for Jamar Chase, because he had a worse season, especially worse than Lamb and worse than Amon-Ra. He was hurt. Burrow was hurt. Just hasn't been. We haven't seen rookie Jamar Chase in like a year and a half.
We had that little stretch where at the beginning of the season, they forgot that they could put Chase in the slot. And then they're like, we could put Chase in the slot. And then he had that 50-point game.
Oh, yeah. The 3 touchdown game. I think Higgins was out for that too. And then Burrow was starting to get healthy again. They're like, everything just kind of, they're like, dude, Jamar Chase is good.
Yeah. Jamar Chase is good. Like, that's not something you have to worry about. Jamar Chase had a bad season, finishing as the wide receiver 11 in points per game. How many points per game do you think was difference between Chase and Waddle?
2.5.
It's 3. A little less than 3. It was like 2.8. And that's with both of them having not great seasons. But again, if they both have good seasons, they both got to do this.
Right.
They both move up. So that's why I'm kind of sticking with, like, I'm good with, especially when you change White in the 111 to London. Like, I love how easily that worked out with those two trades. That I feel that is something, like, especially if I have a rebuilding team or a team that is good, but like, oh man, I only have like 7 starters and you need to start 10. I would do the chase for those 2 wide receivers and still feel really good about my team.
I like it.
All right. So the last player we're going to talk about, and the guy we've like alluded to this entire show, is Josh Downs. And this makes me sad because I like Josh Downs. In Peter Schrager's mock draft, they had the Colts taking Malik Neighbors at 9.
They traded up for him.
I did not like that. I was already coping with the amount of older mock drafts that had the Colts taking Brock Bowers, but I'm not ready for the Colts to take Malik Neighbors. First of all, I love me some Michael Pittman, and while they are not at all the same player, and 2 good wide receivers can coexist in the fantasy world on the same team, I have not the most faith in Anthony Richardson as a passer, and I just want Pittman to get fed because that would just make me happy. But it seems like the Colts are at least in the realm of taking a pass catcher, which will be bad for Josh Downs, because if it's Bowers, there's 2 target hogs ahead of Josh Downs. If it's Neighbors, there's 2 target hogs ahead of Josh Downs. Like, it doesn't matter that it's a tight end or a wide receiver. It's just 2 players that are better than Josh Downs. And while, again, Josh Downs plays a different game than Neighbors and plays a different game than Bowers, plays a different game than Pittman, Anthony Richardson.
There's too much going on. And even if it's not one of those guys, if it's Brian Thomas Jr. or they had an official combine visit and a top 30 visit with Xavier Worthy.
That makes me more worried than if it were Neighbors.
It could be Franklin. It could be Adonai. They are in a position where I think most people don't really consider them to be taking a wide receiver, but they really are in a good position. And it kind of is low key a need because Alec Pierce is not it.
Yeah,
that they can very easily, they can very easily upgrade him and put more weapons around Anthony Richardson, as it seems like it's kind of the trend recently where if you have a younger quarterback that you want to develop into a franchise, just give him weapons, give him no excuse for why he isn't good other than he's just not good, and then move on from there. So
I love that you put Downs on here also because like we've been talking about high profile players and high value players, and that's not all that happens. Like Josh Downs level players get affected here. And oh my God, I just saw a Quentin Johnston's analyzer value and I want to cry.
Yeah. But you bring up a good point though. Like, it's like sometimes it is these Josh Downs level players that get affected the most from the NFL draft because they're the most likely to be replaced or be affected by somebody coming in who is of equal or slightly better talent level. And you just want to be churning out the back end, maybe the middle end of your rosters to maximize your potential down in there as well too.
Yeah. All right. So let's get to the trades. 12-team Superflex, the 106, Josh Downs and Quentin Johnston for Brandon Aiyuk. And I love that you tied that in. There you go. The 106, 416, Josh Downs, 137, Quentin Johnston, 51.5.
Yikes.
No. He's right now the wide receiver one on that team. That is disrespectful.
Is he though?
Right. Josh Palmer is the wide receiver one.
That's fair. There you go. I'm so sorry.
So many draft picks. So sorry. The 106 is 416, Josh Downs 137, Quentin Johnston 52 for a total of 605. Aiyuk by himself 523. I'm cool with the idea of trading Aiyuk away for this. If you for some reason felt the need to trade a 26-year-old wide receiver away, because at the 106, you're looking again at some combination of Neighbors, Odunze, Bowers, and McCarthy, if you want to be crazy about it, or if something weird happens and like Marvin Harrison falls, like if Neighbors gets drafted before Marvin Harrison and someone, which a lot of people in the NFL are talking like that's going to happen unless it's smokescreen, whatever, like the 106 is a prime spot is what I'm trying to get across.
Yeah.
So if you're looking to age down or re-roll or any way you want to put it, adding the dart throws of Josh Downs and Quentin Johnston isn't terrible. I'd prefer, squish the value into one other thing and maybe a little more, like if we were talking about a 200, hold on, I'm in the wrong. I have to change to Superflex.
Christian Kirk. Deontay Johnson.
Perfect. Like, I would take the 106 and either of those two for Brandon Aiyuk and feel fine about it. In the long run, I would probably just rather have Aiyuk because he's really good and we've seen him be really good. But again, if you wanted to age down and re-roll, I would take that trade and then see what I can do and see if I could sell Deontay Johnson on the safety blanket of Bryce Young hype and try and get an early second for him.
Yeah.
But I like this trade. I like the idea of this trade, and I like the practice much more of that last trade we had where it was better in theory than in practice. Like this is much better than that is, but I'm still going to take the Aiyuk side more than not here.
Yep, I'm taking Aiyuk as well. But I think the example and the next trade showcases this as well too. Is like you might be wondering, well, why should I sell Josh Downs? Like, what am I going to do? Like sell him for like a second round pick? Then I'm hoping that somebody has a rookie year like Josh Downs had, or at least started to look like he was going to have before he got hurt. And then Gardner Minshew was QB and whatever. And I understand that. Like I probably wouldn't trade Josh Downs for some random second round pick, but I think that this trade does a good example of showcasing that Downs is a very plus piece in deals right now. Like he is somebody that definitely moves the needle one way or another. And if you are concerned about him losing value from the NFL draft because the Colts potentially add Neighbors or BTJ or Bowers or Worthy or whoever it is, and you want to capitalize on that value now, you might not view him as that much of a plus piece, and then you can upgrade and get something better. That's what I want to do with Josh Downs. I want to use him as a piece to upgrade whatever position. It could be upgrade at wide receiver. It could be upgrade one of your draft picks from, outside of the top 10 to inside that top 8 that we care about so much. Or upgrade at the running back position or the tight end position. That is what I'm trying to do with Josh Downs and why I wanted him in this video. And that's what I think this is here, where you're upgrading from the maybe of Odunze or Bowers just to some solid value in Brandon Aiyuk.
Yeah, and just to further reiterate what Addison just said, just because a player is worth X doesn't mean you trade him for X. You just use him as that value. So like Addison said, just trading Downs for a second is fine if you want to, but it's not a move that really totally makes sense to do. But using that value to bridge a gap or to make some, like I've constantly said, like, I'll throw in the 210 to make a deal happen. Like, yeah. I'll throw in Josh Downs to make a deal happen. Like, that kind of thing. Like, it's one of those things where it's not a zero value piece. It's a piece that absolutely has value. But if the rest of a deal of higher assets of like the 106 and Brandon Aiyuk is resting on that, I would absolutely use that to bridge a gap and make a deal happen.
Absolutely.
This next one is a big boy trade. It is back to the 106. It is the 106, Zay Flowers, Kirk Cousins, and Josh Downs for Justin Herbert and James Cook. So much to take in here. The 106 is 416, Zay Flowers 358, Kirk Cousins 303, Josh Downs 137 for a total of 1214. Justin Herbert 813, James Cook 243, total of 1057. So 1214 on the 4 side and 1057 on the 2 side. How worried are you for Justin Herbert with the combination of a run-heavy head coach and what is soon going to be a rookie wide receiver 1?
I'm worried for him to I don't think his value is going to really go anywhere because he's still Justin Herbert. But I think his production, it might not be where you exactly want him. Like, I feel like people who have him are probably like, I have a locked-in QB1. And I think you have a locked-in top 15 guy. Like, I think he might just be Kirk Cousins,
Yeah, he dropped in that tier for me. Like, I still have him in the second tier, but he's at the bottom of the second tier now. Like, I'm legit worried. Like, I saw someone, like, again, I did not fact check whatsoever. I saw someone tweet out, like, through the history of Harbaugh and Greg Roman together, the most throws per game a quarterback had was like 29, and Justin Herbert averages like 37.
Yeah, that's like almost 40. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like really up there. I can't remember the exact number, but like
I think they meet in the middle probably. Like, they probably, like, Justin Herbert is by far one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback that Jim Harbaugh has ever had.
Fair.
But I like if you meet in the middle and say it's like 33 to 34, that's still cutting into his volume. And if his touchdown efficiency isn't there because the offense isn't as great, or they're converting more touchdown drives and finishing more drives with the running back instead of with Herbert, and with all the question mark pieces around him, even if it is Marvin Harrison or it is Malik Neighbors, like there might still not be enough there for Herbert to be a top 8 or 10 guy.
Yeah, and would I be surprised if he is? No, not at all. No. He's Justin Herbert. He's that good. Would I be surprised if he's not? No. The situation is scary. I wanted to put that out there. Like, well, first I wanted to hear your opinion, and thankfully you agree with me because that makes me feel smart. So 106, Zay Flowers, Kirk Cousins, Josh Downs for Justin Herbert and James Cook. All of everything we just said leads me to the package side. I'm not the biggest James Cook guy. Zay Flowers, also fine. Kirk Cousins, if the production of Kirk Cousins and Justin Herbert were literally the exact same for the next 2 years, I don't think I'd be surprised.
Nope.
But of course, you get that 9-year age difference.
Which is significant when you're talking about a quarterback in his mid-30s versus his mid-20s.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, I'm not worried about Kirk Cousins retiring anytime soon at all. But it's still, again, directions of your team and everything. And Justin Herbert is, in fact, for good reasons worth more than Kirk Cousins. But like if I'm a competing team, like you get Kirk Cousins, you're going to put in your lineup every week. You're getting the upside of the Odunze Bowers, whatever area of rookie picks. You're getting Zay Flowers, who will be a solid wide receiver too, and maybe more if Andrews gets hurt again. And Josh Downs, again, in here is a piece that just seemed like he was thrown in there to get the deal done. Like, yeah, I like that, but give me a young something with upside. And that's what Josh Downs could be. And if you believe, like we both seem to, that Josh Downs might not have that upside after the NFL draft, you take advantage of the fact that other people think that way and use Josh Downs to bolster the value of your team to get that deal done. Again, I don't think I do that in this specific example because like if this were not this year, if this were last year, it would be a very, very different story. Like if I believe Justin Herbert had the upside of a normal Chargers offense with Keenan Allen and what I wanted Quentin Johnson to be.
Very easily Herbert for sure.
Yeah, it would be very easily Herbert at that point.
I agree with everything you said. Like I think that this trade is very, very, very fair, no matter which way you slice it.
Yeah, I think it's a good trade, but it's just the worry of Herbert that puts me aside of it.
Right. I think I would do Herbert if James Cook was a different running back. Like if James Cook was Josh Jacobs, I'd be like, nice. That's like a quality. Like I really believe in Josh Jacobs to be like a top producer this year. Yeah. So I was like, nice. I'll do that. And I'll just bet on the talent of Justin Herbert and I get a running back that I'm confident in can be a top 5 running back this year. Or if you swapped out Herbert for Burrow or Kyler, then that's how easy it is for me to switch over to that side.
Yeah. I agree.
Easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. We will technically see you before the NFL draft, but still, in case you watch our videos a day late, which what better do you have? What are you doing?
That's better. Turn your notifications on Thursday mornings.
There you go. Enjoy the draft. I am very much looking forward to it. It is time for. We haven't had actual news in so long that it's like we're about to get flooded with change of values, and I'm so excited for it. Russ Fisher, Dynasty Outhouse, Addison Hayes, @AmazeHayes_. We'll catch you next time.